her if she does.
Aunt
Yeah.
Sarah is not going to be in attendance. She has a major test tomorrow that she was studying for. She had
Okay.
emailed before the
That's
meeting.
I'll hope she does very well.
Me too.
And well, I look forward to this night, Wednesday night, 3 weeks into the month, and look forward to seeing you all. And it's nice tonight. We're home. I will start the meeting, call the meeting to order. We can go then from there. You're familiar with me using these eyepieces. We'll go from calling the meeting to order and reading the Sunshine Law. Brian usually reads it, so you're going to have to put up with me going
You want me
through
to
it.
read it, Ralph?
Pardon me?
You want me to read it for you?
If you wanted to, you would read it faster than I would, like this.
Either way, I'll read it. That's fine.
Please go ahead.
In accordance with the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act, public meetings may be held in person or by means of communication equipment to include streaming services and other online meeting platforms. Due to the COVID-19 situation, the Borough of Fairhaven's municipal facilities are closed to the public. This meeting is being presented through the Zoom meeting platform and being broadcast from Borough Hall, 748 River Road, Fairhaven, New Jersey. Public participation for this Environmental Commission meeting of February 17th, 2021 is available by call-in phone number or through the web conference Zoom. Members of the public will be on mute until the portion for public questions, comments, which will be announced. At that time, the public has the opportunity to question, comment by phone or through Zoom by the raise hand button and will be called on at the appropriate time. Notice of this meeting was included in a schedule of meetings sent to the Asbury Park Press, the Two River Times, the Hub, and the Star Ledger on January 28, 2021. Posted on the Borough website, the bulletin board, in the municipal building, and has remained continuously posted as required under the statute. With adequate notice having been given, the Environmental Commission Secretary is directed to include this statement in the minutes of this meeting.
Call for 732-986-6217.
Thank you very much. That was Alexa breaking in. Okay, that having been done, Jesse, could we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Okay.
732.
Oh, boy. Sorry, you're Alexa. All right. Got Ralph, myself, Brian's not present yet. He's supposed to be here. Pat Keeler, Gary, John Peters doesn't look like he's on either. Kelly, Greg, Sarah is absent tonight, and Leilini will, if she can make it, will be late.
Right. Both are excused absences there for good causes. Oh, this is nice. We next have the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance
The flag.
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, under God, with liberty, justice for all. Thank you. That was very nice. That was Brian's suggestion about a year ago. And I seem to not be able to stop it. We have to call you back. Thank you. Okay. Okay, fine. Then, having done the Pledge of Allegiance, the approval of the January meetings, which were, I thought, put together very well by Jesse. Are there any comments? Have you all read them? They were sent out about a week ago. Okay, I see nodding heads. Are there any comments or additions? Seeing none, I will assume that they are approved as written then, and we will deem them approved and they will be sent on to Allison. Okay, Having done done that, we get into the business. And the first item here, Kelly, is of course the Sustainable New Jersey. And just to sort of keep us on our toes, I'm told that Rumson has gotten the bronze award. And I think they should be very proud of it. I'm sure they are. It's going to raise the question as to whether, with a bit more work perhaps, Kelly, and we need not have an answer tonight, but I will want to discuss it on the side with you and ask you to give me a call at your convenience. Whether we shouldn't be working for bronze, having already had the entry level. Bronze is the second level, right?
Bronze is the first level,
It's
second
the
level is
first-
silver.
Okay, I was confused then. Well, okay, very fine. You might address the question of what it would take to go to the second level. I know it's a big step, but let's just go over that information as you go through the talk on
Sure.
the SJ.
Great. And I think this was something that came up in our last meeting. So last meeting, we had a great turnout. We had the newly elected members join us for the first time.
Right,
And what is also great is that we have a representative from the Shade Tree Commission also on part of our Green Team meeting, because what I believe is that there's a lot of overlap among the different committees, and I think it's this lack of communication that maybe perhaps we don't know what these other committees are doing, and therefore we don't apply for them in Sustainable Jersey, and we're not rewarded the points. So I think it's a great first step to have the Shade Tree Commission on, because there's a lot of projects that both of us can be aligned on and would benefit. It'll be a win-win. It would benefit them as well, and it would get us some extra points because they're already planning to do it. In that regard too, there's been some discussion with the Fairhaven Community Garden Association. Right now we get 10 points through Sustainable Jersey for that, but we've reached out to them and asked for their interest, if they'd be willing to require some green practices in the garden, or if there's any donating of food items from the garden, which some members already do. And so that would be just a simple documentation, and we can up our points from 10 to 20 points. So I think it's this, there's probably a lot of this going on in the community that we're just not aware of. And it might just be a simple, outreach communication and then, documentation to get more points. We are trying to host a composting workshop this month or next month, in the next 4 to 6 weeks, virtually. We've been talking to Monmouth County Master Gardener to do that, and it's just a matter of setting up a date. But we hope to do that virtually, where members who sign up can purchase a composting bin for $35, very discounted price.
Lost their connection.
This is a big win-win too for the town, because our trash pickup is by the pound, and
right.
Councilman McHugh was on there saying that trash pickup was much more this past year. And composting does add in, it weighs quite a bit. And if you can angle that as well, that perhaps get more community households to join in on backyard composting. Maybe there would be a place where people could drop off composting. Some of these ideas were brought up as well.
Joan Jay will remember that we did a composting project in about 1990. I think it was about 1990, and we still have the thing that has lasted has been the plastic composting box. We've fallen out of a habit, but it worked well for a number of years. We put in leaves and chemicals, and leaves and chemicals, and some fresh garbage from the house, and the stuff came out, and we put it in the ground.
Right.
So there's no reason we can't do it again.
Right. And, I think just the idea of even just saving the town, I think McHugh was telling us there's $70,000 extra in, cost for removal of trash. And so you wonder how much, food scraps and other household items can add up. So we've been trying to see where, and so that will also bring us some more points. Obviously, there was more talk about green building and some of the solar, for the new projects. I know we're going to talk about that later on the agenda. But I think trying to capitalize on these big projects, which don't come up often, could help establish significant points that could bump us up to the next level. I think there's a lot of room for that. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But just as another side note is that the next round of funding through PSE&G grants for Sustainable Jersey will be released next week, on the 21st or 22nd. So hopefully, if there's something in that regard, especially, towards energy, perhaps we can apply for some of that funding.
Yeah, that's good funding. I mean, it's a nice chunk of cash. And we did win it once. I remember going down to Atlantic City and accepting the prize. I think we'd be happy to do it again if we could. If I can be helpful, tell me. I
Sure.
might be able to be.
Great.
Okay.
Great. Excellent.
Okay. So how are you doing on your schedule? Let's say for bronze right now.
Right. So for bronze, we are pretty much on track to get bronze and get a little bit more than that with our point schedules. We're hoping that we've set an internal deadline of getting all the materials to both Alini and I by March 15th, so that we have 2 months plus to make sure we have all our loose ends before we submit it on June 6th.
Right. Okay. That's good. Now, June 6th is not the last day we could submit it.
No, that's the initial.
That's the initial. And if I don't know what the rules are, if we chose to try to shoot for the next level, could we, the question we want to discuss, not tonight, is whether we could have everything ready for June 6th to guarantee that we're in there solidly with bronze, but then work on some differential that might get us up, I believe it's quite a number of points, but would
Yeah.
get us up to the next level.
Right. I know, I believe it's 200 more points to get to
I think
silver.
it's close to that, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's 150 is bronze and 350 is silver.
That's right, yeah.
And so that is a substantial amount when you're talking about these little things, like the composting garden is 10 points. I mean, the community garden is 10 points, but if we can up it, it'd be 20, like these little 10 increments of 10 points, that's a lot. But that's why if we can capitalize on some of these larger infrastructure, green building, I know that there was a lot of talk about even some electric vehicle, down the line or anything. Those are substantial points, 40, 50 points. And they're also long-term, you don't have to renew them if they're embedded in the
Right.
community infrastructure.
Kelly, maybe offline, you and I could talk. Maybe
Sure.
you could put together in an auditing sense, some of the things, a list of some of the things with the points that might add up to the 200 points. And let's find out how impossible it really is. Okay?
Sure. Got it.
So give me a
Okay.
call when you get a chance. I'll be home obviously over the weekend, snow being here. And I'll be home most of next week.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Kelly, is there a liaison that attends your meetings from the E EC?
Myself, Lolini, those are the from the environmental
Sure.
committee.
Cool.
Yeah, and that's necessary, Brian. That's good.
Yeah, because we don't want to duplicate efforts, and if there's some things that we should be doing here and coordinate things, that's all, just to not kind of
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
do all that.
Okay, that's wonderful. I have, I sort of, you can guess, I have my heart set on silver. But, it'll happen. If it doesn't happen this year, it'll happen the year after. but the sooner the better. Okay, thank you very much, Kelly. It's very good to have you with us. The next item on the list, let's see. We had town.
The LED streetlights, Ralph.
Pardon me?
The LED streetlights, if there's any update with
Yeah,
that.
LED. What letter are we on? It's on B. Yeah.
Yep.
I was just in touch with JCPL today, and I was in touch with Frank Luna. Frank is a representative for us here in Fairhaven, and he's a wonderful guy. He really is. He's been pulled away for 2 National Guard tours, one for 6 months in Iran. He was back from that for maybe a month or maybe a little bit more. Allison can keep me honest. And just as we were set to do the streetlight project, JCPL said, well, they were going in for a new tariff, and the attorneys would not let them go ahead without that tariff finally being negotiated. The tariff, as I can see it, I have went and got a copy of it online, which you can do. I couldn't reach him because Frank was then, after a few weeks, asked to go and control the unruly mobs at the Capitol in Washington. And he's just back now. Was back last week, in fact. So we talked today. And he's going to get back to me on Monday at 3 o'clock to tell me, I hope he's going to tell me how we start this project and move ahead, and has a plan. He said he would do that. So he's going to meet with the attorneys between now and then. And we are then presumably to go ahead with the field trial of 12 of the LED lights, which have been chosen. Brian was very helpful in this with me. We drove around Fairhaven. We identified by pole number and by company the poles. We identified which should be the higher lumen lights and which should be the lower. And so we've got all that set into Frank. He will be ready to do this, and the 12 lights they put in this field trial will be free still under the new, and that's the nice news, free under the new tariff. So they will be putting them in for free. These are all incandescent lights that are being replaced. They'll represent a significant energy charge, and actually a savings, it turns out, to our budget, because we do pay a proportionate part of the lights. That's a proportionate part of our monthly fee. Costs a lot more than that, and an amazingly large part. John Peters, is John here tonight?
No.
Okay, well then we won't hear any explosions. But an amazingly large part of the price of lighting is the price of maintenance. Now, our cops phone in every light bulb that they see blown out. Used to be we had a lot of dead ones. Richard Huff and I went around town and counted 48 of them. And Teresa, we met with Teresa, and we agreed that the cops would call them in. I thought that was what they were doing, but some pressure on JCPL got their trucks out within a couple of days. So we're not getting that problem anymore. We paid for the lights energy, whether they were on or off, which is probably the kind of thing that contributes to John's frustration with JCPL. Okay, that's about all I have to say. Wish us luck in these discussions on Monday. I think we can, by this time next month, say we're off to the races. Let's see. Okay, that's where we are. Okay, that was item 6B. Item 6C is the Navesink River stormwater. Now, stormwater, let me explain a little bit what's happened here. The state of New Jersey has taken a much stricter point of view on stormwater and retention of stormwater rather than having it pour into the waterways with all the pollutants that are included. They put together a fairly strict bill. In fact, one that is going to hit a lot of people who are building homes. I didn't realize it until I went through the three models I had. One was the state stormwater rules. The second was the necessary required ordinance that Nick put together and reviewed with our attorneys, and now has turned out a draft, which I circulated to you today. I may have done it before. And so you have that, and you also have, it can be compared to the state version. Let me say that there were very, very few changes. They were largely grammatical or to put the state version in the form of a municipal ordinance. There were no substantial changes between the state proposal and the county and the borough ordinance proposed. So there's a third version now, and the version was put out by Sustainable Jersey's Watershed Institute. It makes some very significant changes and makes them stiffer, as you can guess. And ultimately, I believe that we want them to be very much more similar to the Watershed Institute version. I hesitate to say that that's now, because when I read the two versions side by side, and you've seen them, I've sent them to you. When I read the two versions side by side to first of all understand the differences between the state and our version, very small. When I read the state version and the Watershed Institute version, they're significant. One of the first things that, and I'm trusting that you have read over at least one of the versions, one of the first things that hit you is the four definitions of a major development. With a major development, you got to do some really big things to retain that water, depending on how major and what the location is and what the soil conditions are. The addition, which is the state version or what I'll call Nick's version, Fairhaven version. The Fairhaven version has a requirement that 1 acre of soil be disturbed. And that disturbance is between the structures that are being built and any things like tar or cement driveways, asphalt or cement driveways are being put in. An acre may seem like a lot, and it is to most of the houses in Fairhaven, but there are houses being built here that together with their driveways are closely approaching an acre and are certainly bigger than a half an acre. A half an acre being what, 40,000 square feet, half an acre being 20. There are some houses in town being put in 8,000 to 9,000 square feet plus sidewalks and all. So the discussion tonight that we're going to have, and I'd like to open it up in a moment, is a discussion: do we stay with the current Fairhaven ordinance and recommend that to council, or do we recommend the Watershed version, Institute version, which is a half an acre and ultimately, as I said, covers driveways, walks, and any combination of those greater than a half an acre deemed as a major development. Honesty counts. How many of you have looked at the ordinances? Good. Jesse has. You have. Good. Very good. Virtually everybody. Okay, that's wonderful. So let me open up the discussion. Raise your hands, and we're ultimately going to vote on this. and make a recommendation to council, one or the other. If it's a tie vote, I'm not sure it can be. If it's a tie vote, we're not recommending a change. If it's a vote that's one more than tie, we are. Jesse, your hand is up.
Yeah, I just want to say, I know you're just talking about the major development, but it's not just major development. They had
You're
other
right.
definitions of like minor development and, you know, defining redevelopment and having some reporting requirements. I know those were the major things that they were discussing in this. So I don't know if it's necessarily, maybe not necessarily adopting everything, but maybe kind of, I know Brian mentioned this at the last meeting, like picking out what's, I think, most important to us and what could potentially be actually adopted. And I know personally, after going through this, the definition of redevelopment is something that would be, I think, pretty substantial, just considering everything going on in town.
You're
And
right.
and potentially taking on some of the definitions for major development. I think that would be good too. And then just reporting requirements, maybe not as strict, but maybe at least having an annual reporting requirement. I don't think it's necessary to go all in and include the minor development, but I think at the, you know, that's kind of where I'm leaning for this. So not adopting everything, but I think maybe kind of grabbing some pieces from this ordinance. So that's my piece.
Okay, no, I think many of the things you said are correct. I didn't have the time to go into them. But let me tell you another point of view that I'm worried about. Either one of these is going to be significant to the parties that are affected, whether they're commercial parties in town or whether they're residential. If they're commercial parties, they'll probably say, "What a pain." And they'll hire a lawyer and they'll pay for what they'll do the minimum they have to do, but they'll do it, and that'll be it. If we begin to hit a significant number of residential development at this stage, this is the first stage of introduction of these watershed requirements. If we begin to do that, I worry about losing the support of the public. There are, I'm not bringing politics into it, but there are many people in this country that have a Trump point of view, and they're entitled to that point of view. They have a point of view that government is too big, does too much, is interfering in their personal lives. We want this to be a success. So my inclination is to introduce it gradually and primarily put the burden on the commercial community at this point in time. I'm just giving you my instinct more than anything else.
Oh, Ralph, just to be clear, the Watershed Institute, which I brought to the attention of the Environmental Commission in the town,
Right.
is only to add possible more restrictions to the town. It's not an ordinance, okay? So we got to get that out of our vocabulary. All it was an additional white paper from Sustainable Jersey through their Watershed Institute to say, hey, this is up for adoption, meaning that we had no choice for Nick to write up some big, ordinance. It's not him. All he had to do was copy what the state said and make it for Fairhaven. So I just want to be clear on that. He's,
Nick added nothing. Nick added no substantial factors.
He can't.
He
He
can't.
wouldn't. He
Oh,
can't.
I know that. I realize that.
But what the town can do is look at the bullet points from the Watershed Institute and say, okay, what would be germane to 1 acre, 1 square mile town of Fairhaven, which happens to all dump their water, stormwater into the river. Okay, there's only a small corner that goes to the other river, but it's 18.2 million gallons of water that goes into the river per 1.5 inches of rain. And when I sat on the planning board, I tried to, and all I could do was give my input. If somebody wanted to pave a driveway, put the grade at the end of it with some, to try to limit that water, that runoff, sheet runoff from the driveway into the street into, down Gillespie or down to Normandy or down Fairhaven Road,
Mhm.
go to these and you see these outfall pipes. When it's pouring rain, it's unbelievable how much water comes out of these things. So that's all that I think we need to try to do. And being on the planning board, I had nothing, and now Jesse's been nominated and approved to be our rep to the planning board. Thank you. And Jesse and I
Jesse,
have the
my
same heart
congratulations.
when it comes to the river and the watershed. Okay. And so if we can have it a little bit more restrictive, two things to have, to be able to institute a little bit more on development would be great. I sat on the planning board. We talked about the renovation of Acme. They did put in a couple of cisterns and all this, that, and the other, which is all fine and good. But once they're buried and they're not inspected, it doesn't do us a damn bit of good to have, because all they do is fill up with muck and they totally don't serve any purpose. At that point, they're more caustic than they are usable, right? So
Right.
there's nothing, and as far as I know, and Allison maybe or maybe does not know this, there's nothing, there's no oversight on that. So once it's done, it's done.
That's
So
correct.
if I dig a cistern and it fills up with muck, it's basically not usable. And that's why, by the way, gravel driveways are not impervious, they're not pervious surfaces. So if somebody said, I'm going to put in a gravel driveway and then I'm going to pass the pervious coverage, it doesn't work, because as you drive on it, you go down Brownsdock or any of these roads that are dirt, that water just sheets down just like a paved driveway. So
Right.
we have to keep all this in mind. People lose that, try to retain as much water as we can on our properties, go into the groundwater, then it gets to the river, but it's clean. That's what we need to do. And if we can do that through making this ordinance a little bit stiffer because of the nature of the town and where we're located, I'm all for it. Having said that, and it's being recorded, basically Teresa has said nothing's going to be changed now because we're up against crunch time, because they only have till March 2nd or whatever the exact date is in March to adopt this. So, but I think we have to continue the conversation, because she said we can amend it. And I think that, I don't want it to get away from us to where it's passed, fine, because we have no choice to pass what's there. To
It's
look
a
at it now.
statutory requirement.
What's that, Allison?
It's a statutory requirement. We
It's a
have
statutory
no,
requirement, so they're not doing it out of goodness of their hearts. It has to be done. But if we can sit here and come up with some reasonable changes and see if council will vote and pass to amend it, is where we stand. We can't. So that's
I agree. And by the way, Brian, you bring out a key point. There is very, very little. It's mentioned in 2 paragraphs, maintenance.
Sure.
And there's very, very little commanding influence there.
Right.
That's one of the weakest points of the current stormwater.
one of the
Right.
reasons I'm not on the planning board anymore. It was a waste.
Well, and one of the reasons, look, one of the reasons why I do not think this evening we will be able to make progress on identifying specific things is not merely the short time fuse for this, but as it's written, and I read through Nick's whole thing, one end to the other.
I
It
did
is
too.
designed essentially as it puts specific requirements on the larger, the major developments, right? The lots over an acre, or if you're going to have more than a quarter acre of total new impervious surface road plus driveways, etc. But the way that the ordinance works is mostly by getting the developer to hire an engineer and develop a plan and show that they meet the requirements of this. And at the moment, it's highly oriented toward that mode of satisfying the requirements, which I think is going to be fairly unpleasant if people on smaller lots end up having to hire the engineering firms that can do hydrology, in addition to the rest of the professionals which are required when doing some kind of work on, say, up to half an acre. And you know, I'm sure the engineers who have these skills love this because it's going to make their businesses in great demand.
Well,
But I think we really want to try and find, you know, what are the kind of minimum things which the developer of a smaller lot size might have to do, as opposed to, definite things, you just tick them off. If you did them, you would be in compliance, and you have some options, as opposed to, the typical requirement which we make on larger developers because they have lawyers, which is to hire an engineer, document it, and give it to the town. The town reviews it and says whether it's okay or not. And this satisfies the requirements of statute, but I think as Brian noted, that doesn't necessarily get us what we
Right,
want in terms
Right,
of
exactly.
like you make
results.
you make a very good point, Greg. Very good.
I think
And the bill is not written for residences, and they should not be included, was my own. And we need a separate one for residences.
I think that if we could come up with a ratio, whether it's 50%, right, and have the table there that will tell you how much rain, on a 100-year storm, 50-year storm, and that's how we measure it when we do all these studies with the DEP, how much rain, how much water over an annual period based on those numbers, we could account for on X piece of property, right? And then you have X coverage, and now you have Y as your answer of how much rainwater you're going to contribute to the stormwater system.
Mhm.
And then if we say, look, we want that reduced by 50%, here's best practices that work, right? And lay it out just really clean cut, unlike planning board and zoning board rules now, which is a big issue. Another reason I'm not on the planning board. That, it's so convoluted that, yeah, if I would do a renovation, I got to hire an engineer, an architect, a planning, all they do. And it's amazing that, it looks like it's collusion, right? It's crazy. And in my business, it's illegal. So I think that it behooves us to use this as a springboard and say, hey, here's what makes sense for the average homeowner, right? Let's try to recharge 50% of it. Whatever that number is, if we can get that 18.2 million gallons down to 9, that's a win, right?
Right.
And because everybody says, oh, we got to stop pesticides and we got to stop this. No, you got to stop the carrier, and that's water. If we can reduce that water, the hydraulic flow to the river, you don't have to worry so much about what's on the lawns, what's on the streets, and all this stuff. And that's always been my point. It's just like the doctor and the lifeguard. The lifeguard keeps going saving the people. The doctor's smart enough to go upstream, see why they're all floating down the river. So let's work with that, and then go forward.
Okay, thank you, Brian. That's a helpful contribution. And at the end of this discussion, I'm going to try to summarize the discussion. And depending on how the rest of you feel, I'm going to try to make a couple of proposals how we could approach this problem in keeping with what I've been hearing. The next set of comments are going to come from whom? Okay.
Yeah, I just, we're talking lot sizes and net changes on development, but I mean, this town is full of small lots, and yes, we don't want, no one's asking anybody to retrofit anything. You're talking about like when someone takes down one of these bungalows and they put in a new $1.8 million house, they got to add, a $10,000 cistern. It's not that big a deal. I think with these regulations, most of the architectural firms will probably just figure out how to do this pretty easily. I don't think we're really asking for a lot. I think what we're just going to do is take, we have a whole town where, we have 40% lot coverage, turning into houses that are 80% lot coverage. And this water is just, we're going to have more water. We have 18 million gallons now. As this continues, like it's going to go up to, 29 million gallons. I mean, if we just keep even, we'll be lucky.
Right.
So, I mean, I know we're talking half acre, 10,000 square feet, 5,000 square feet, but you know, I mean, it's a small lot, but it's a $1.8 million job. I mean, I don't think a cistern is really going to make anybody that upset, Ralph. I don't think the MAGA crowd is going to come for us.
And Patrick, I would say, you know, part of the best practices, sure, it could be a cistern, but that's a pretty big job.
Yeah, that's just the
All they
first
have
one
to
on the
do is
list.
put a French drain around the house and have instead of the downspouts going out into the street, have them go into the ground, have them go into the groundwater
Right,
instead
or
of.
you just need a swale, I think, sometimes, you know, if
Whatever,
you have
it
enough.
doesn't
if you
matter.
have
It
enough-
doesn't even have, you're better off not putting it in a cistern. Just let it go into the ground. The
Right,
ground,
right.
Mother Nature is great at filtering things,
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, I mean,
but it
in
costs.
my own neighborhood, like three ranches right next to me have all turned into, you know, big houses. And Fairhaven has zoning laws against, you know, house size, but people are getting around them with these sunrooms, these gigantic sunrooms that are, you know, garages technically, so they don't count. So, but like what was a half acre lot with 30% coverage impervious is now 85% coverage because of these, you know, it's all roof and
Right.
driveway, and
Right.
That's
that's
to
just
my
going to
point,
increase
is
the
just,
amount of water that we're generating.
and that's exactly my point. I don't care how big it is. I don't care how big the lot is. If we just say, look, we're gonna try to reduce stormwater to 50%. I don't care. It doesn't matter, because now you're gonna say, I have to fit within that guidelines. Okay, what's the best practice? Oh, Environmental Commission has a list of 10 things.
Yeah, right.
Okay, that's a good point. Good. Both you and Patrick have made good points. Gary, do you have any thoughts on this?
You're muted.
He's muted. Hold on, let me unmute.
You're muted. Maybe I can unmute you.
No, you got.
Oh, he's got it.
Okay, Gary,
There you
you're
go, Gary.
unmuted. No, you're not.
No, now his mic's not working.
He's unmuted his, yeah.
Oh, I wish I could do that.
You have to unmute at your end. Gary,
Unmute your mic.
unmute your mic there in the lower left corner of your picture.
No, still can't.
Maybe sign language.
Yeah, sign language.
Keep your signs,
All right.
okay.
Thanks for your comments, Gary. No, you can't.
Okay, let's move on.
Run down the street.
Gary,
one
Ralph,
march.
can I just say
Gary.
something, Ralph?
Pardon me?
Okay,
Can I
Kelly.
just, say,
I was gonna move to you. Yeah.
oh, okay, thank you. But I just, I should have looked on this earlier. It slipped my mind, but there is, talking about Sustainable Jersey, there is points for stormwater management ordinance. And just by adopting the, you know, the NJDP, the stormwater control ordinance applies to, you know, for 10 points, it's adopting the ordinance that just applies to all major developments defined as a minimum disturbance of half acre land or 5,000 square feet.
Yeah.
However, and so that will get you 10 points, option
No,
2.
we're not a half an acre. The
But
one
we're
we-
not there yet, right? And so, but there are, you know, there is an alignment here, but there's also, and I know talking to Brian's point too, for the, you know, and Pat point about these smaller lots, you know, it kind of goes into this green development checklist that we were also talking about too. I mean, I think it's great if you can actually, when people are applying for new construction or redevelopment, that you can say, look, can you, you know, these are some of the important criteria, a checklist to address. Doesn't mean you have to be compliant on all of them, but here are some things that we recommend for, you know, for reducing this. So there, I will send that to you for Sustainable Jersey. Just, I'll look through the guidelines because you can earn up to 30 points.
So if we adopt from Sustainable Jersey, that Watershed Institute, the whole thing is 30?
No, that's
No.
if you get for even more stringent. So
Well, that was the Watershed Institute. That was to be more
Yeah.
stringent.
so
was the
and I have to look back at it, but it's major developments as well as minor developments defined as a minimum disturbance of 250 square feet or less,
Right.
or 250 square feet or less of impervious surface. That will give you 30 points.
Yeah, well, the minor development is trivial. It doesn't exist in Fairhaven. That was one of the things, I believe, as I read it. I said, this just doesn't work for Fairhaven.
But then for the 20-point option would be the major plus some minor developments of 1,000 square feet of or less.
And that doesn't, I mean, we're talking houses that have 4,000 typically these days, divided by 2 floors, 2,000 per floor, plus a garage or an open area now to avoid the garage ordinance.
Yeah, but I don't know. Are they,
It wasn't suited, wait a minute, Brian. It wasn't, the ordinance as I read it, didn't have anything suited, the watershed ordinance to Fairhaven.
but I think we have to look at habitable square footage. Between that and square footage is totally different. I would say in this case, it's square footage, meaning the outside of the house, because if it's habitable, doesn't mean anything, right? It's whatever my roof covers. And so it would look at square footage of that. To Pat's point, the runoff doesn't come from inside the kitchen.
The
So-
Watershed Institute was very clear, just
Yeah.
plain square feet.
so
Yes, I mean, it is, in
so
fact,
it's
it doesn't even,
habitable.
it doesn't care about whether or not it's on 1 floor or 2, really.
Right,
It's
Yeah.
the shadow if the sun were straight overhead.
Right.
So it's the
It's just-
shadow you're then casts on the
That's right.
ground.
right.
Raised
So what I would,
It does
what
not
I would
get water. through it.
what I would phrase it is impervious versus pervious. I don't give a rat's ass how big the house is. And if we made the ordinance for any size lot and picked a number, 30%, 50%, whatever that is,
Oh.
that would be a win-win for everybody and is more stringent than all the sustainable. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't think in
Yeah.
lawyer terms. I just think in normal terms and say, okay, here's your square footage, here's the calculation, here's what we need you to do.
Okay, we're gonna
That's
have to move on from this discussion now, so let me try to make a proposal here. Um, Gary, can you respond now? Or let me just try something. No, Gary, you don't have a mute sign on your.
He's unmuted. He's got an issue with his microphone or a speaker
Yeah.
on his computer.
Yeah, okay.
Harry, run down the street. I'm like 5 houses down from him.
I assume I can, Gary, I'm assuming you can hear. Shake your head if you can hear. Good. So that having been said, I'm hoping that you have an interest in this topic, and I'd like to propose that a small group of the folks here, pardon me, Brian, Patrick, and Gary, if they're willing volunteers. This is an Army volunteer kind of thing. If the 3 of you are interested, if you would begin to work together to that, I think I have to ask Allison. Allison, I think that meets the legal requirement, 3 or less.
Right, you're under a quorum. And Rich, by the way, Rich Cordella and Nick are reviewing the Watershed Institute information. Because we're under a deadline, we have to get this going, but they do realize that some of what is in there does not meet or is quite an undertaking for residential. So they are looking at that, and they do know that the Environmental Commission is also going to give some recommendations as well. Councilwoman Neff reported at last week's council meeting, that the Environmental Commission would like some other considerations more curtailed to Fairhaven. So,
So what I'm going to propose, and I hope you'll accept the charge, is that Brian, Gary, and Patrick work together to identify, pardon me, to identify the aspects where we ought to be changing the current state ordinance, same as what the town is now recommending, where we ought to improve that ordinance. And I would divide it between residential and commercial.
Yeah.
Because the political problem, we don't want to hit the residences with things they just can't reasonably do, but we do want them to do some good things.
Yes.
So is that a charge that the 3 of you can accept?
I'll answer yes for Gary. Yeah, I'm good.
Yes. Good. And Brian?
Yes.
Yes. Patrick?
Yeah, yeah.
Wonderful. I think we got 3 experts in the area, experts having some experience here. And could I ask for a directional report? That is the direction you're going in each of the residential and commercial areas, a directional summary for the next meeting.
Yes,
Brian,
yes,
okay,
yeah. I'll take
Gary,
care of it with
Patrick?
Patrick and Gary.
Okay, that's very good. Let the minutes record that. We'll
Thank
move
you.
on. This is a very important subject, very important. By the way, they're building a house right next door to us. It's on about 3 acres. They've taken all the topsoil off the house entirely. Come look at it. One Hance Road. They've trucked away truckload after truckload of soil. I don't know what they're doing. I do know it's being watched by Nick. But talk about disturbance of soil. They've disturbed 2.5 acres and it's residential. So we'll go from there. If you want to take a look someday, come over during working hours.
Although Ralph, they have made it more permeable.
Correct.
Oh, give me a break.
No, I'm serious. I mean, if you take what is there off, which is compacted, the water will go into the dirt better. And if they took out the old house too, that'd be even better.
They
Yeah.
did.
Yeah. So
Yeah, that was a property owned by Pat Skerry that he sold. I don't know who he sold it to.
Well, Pat Scare sold it to a guy who owns 5 we've chatted with him, 5 Rite Aid pharmacies, and I believe his wife is a dentist. They have a little girl and a housekeeper, and we've met them all. They seem very, very nice people,
Good.
and they're looking forward to living there. So their heart's in the right place.
Welcome
They
to
could
the-
use a little help. By the way, the one reason I'm not too worried is Hemphill is building the place. And I know Hemphill, and he is an honest guy who isn't going to skirt the law.
Yeah.
I think, I hope. So that's my thought. Okay, we have to move on. That was item 6B.
Technically, that was actually a new business item, Ralph. 6C should have been just any Navasink River updates with Brian. We skipped down to new business with that one.
Fine, I'll take it that way. That's fair. You make a good point. Okay, Brian, we now have your project, which I boast to a lot of people about because I think you're doing God's work. You want to tell us where you are?
Well, if we can get the stormwater stuff, it would help a lot. Basically, there's nothing really new. I've got some issues with some municipalities, one in particular, which I knew I would, but they just actually got awarded. They actually I guess they went into contract, and it's going to be a real big project for them to put in a lot of new sewer lines. So not that Red Bank is easy to drive through. It's going to be even more difficult to drive through, but that's okay because some of their sewers actually go back to the 1800s. They're actually
Some are wooden, some are wooden.
Yeah, some. I don't know if the wooden ones are still utilized, but I know some are terracotta, which isn't not the. Hold on one second. I got a little person knocking at my door. I think it's my kid. I gotta let her in.
He's going out on the beach to let the kids in.
So that was that's a big win for Red Bank and the watershed. So it was good to hear from them. Having said that, they still have an issue at the end of Spring Street. I called out the I have 2 ways to do things. You can do plan A and try to work together. They don't work together, then we go to plan B and to get enforcement involved. I haven't gone to plan B with anybody yet. But I do get forceful and I forced my hand a little bit actually today with Red Bank. When you go by a sewer pipe and it's above ground and there's green around it in February, it's usually not a good thing. So, and it's been an issue for years. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to move a little bit forward there. Colts Neck, they're on top of things. They're getting letters out to everybody.
That's good.
So yeah, so it looks like we're making a lot of headway.
Give me a moment. Colts Neck, and I know it well. My parents lived there. Colts Neck, everything was, nothing was sewer to speak of. They all had drainage
Correct.
on the property. What's new? What's the good news there?
Equine. So we've always had an issue with horses
Yeah,
in Colts Neck. And Colts Neck has always kind of stuck their head in the sand and said, well, we can't be polluting the river. We're all the way upstream. Well, yeah, you are. So with the data from DEP, we're able to track source actually what kind of feces is entering the water system. And it's equine, and we've gone upstream far enough now, and we do, before Colts Neck would not come to the table at all. And I was instrumental in getting them to the table, and they're reaching out to the various farms. To Cameron, there's a burger there for you. And sorry, so she just got back from swim training. And so so they're being proactive now.
Good.
Based on our guidance. So again, goes back to here's the issue. You know, notify them. Okay, and then I'm always a big one to not just say, okay, here's the issue, and here's some best practices. So I've worked together with Rutgers and their ag department for best practices on how to deal with horse manure. So hopefully they'll either put in containment basins or hire their mayor, it turns out, and I know him.
yeah.
He is a farmer, and he owns a trucking company. They have
Like,
dumpsters, and they truck horse waste away from the big farms. So I'm trying to get them to maybe have a co-op and truck it. And then they use it as fertilizer on their farms. So so we're working on that, and it's the same exact thing in Middletown also, by the way.
has he equipped his trucks yet with a trailer and a small front end loader?
No, well, he's got big trucks. They're sealed dumpsters.
Yeah, I know.
They leave at the farms, and then they come with a roll off and cart them away and drop another one off.
Well, yeah, he's got to come and take away the individual small farm stuff.
And that's the thing is it may be too cost prohibitive to do that, but if they could set up, I suggested a co-op of some sort, or just don't throw it near a stream. You know, people don't realize that these streams continue and go somewhere. And then we're also working with the water authority, also at American Water, which is Swimming River, with the influent into the reservoir, which is our drinking water. They only test it coming out of their facility. I'm looking for tests coming into their facility. But again, it's wildlife and equestrian. So taking care of Colts Neck is gonna alleviate a lot of that. There are parts of the river. There's 2 stations right now that are still testing below the geometric mean, but pretty much all the other ones are testing, above. So they could, in essence, upgrade the river back to restricted waters rather than closed waters.
I told one of the reporters from the River Times recently that work was being done with municipalities. I just said west of Red Bank. And I said, I thought we'd see some progress there. I mentioned you were working with them.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of progress. I'll get some.
I think it would help. I think it was a Paige that I was talking to.
Yeah.
I think it would help if you had some good examples that were identified numerically as being improvements.
Yeah, I have all the data, and it shows.
I know you do. So if you could do that and you had a winner in Colts Neck, I'll help you get in the paper. And I think it might help you completely.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I mean, I haven't been one of those guys that needs any money or any, notoriety. I just want to make a difference.
It's not for that. It's for other, for the people in Colts Neck seeing their colleagues who have the same problem,
Yeah.
successfully solving it.
I even have a DEP shirt too. Yeah. But
So-
it's been a pretty good success. I know Clean Ocean Action, they jumped on this, and this is how I knew about the issue. And I've known about the issue for 30 years. But I was like, a lone man talking about it. But they now have, Clean Ocean Action has now expanded their rally for the Navasink to rally for the Two Rivers or something. So they've had the South River join in. They allowed them to. I have been approached a couple of times from environmental commissions on the South River. I told them they're more than welcome to sit in on our meetings with the NRMC. Some people have, but they've always had an Oceanport Watch, that came out of the track. The track
Right.
they got sued. And they had to put in a containment area. It was $18.2 million, $18 million, whatever it was, to contain it. And the big thing is the continued oversight. And that's what we lost with the Navasink River Municipalities Committee. They cleaned up everything in 06, and then it just kind of disbanded because their mission was done, but the mission's never done.
No.
And that's why the stormwater, if these towns residing on the river could adopt some of these ordinances and be tougher on stormwater management, would be key to the river.
Okay, well, we're gonna have to move on now, but really your work is moving along very nicely. And the big question is maintenance, and everything we're doing, maintenance is an important feature. It can't be left out. And that's a feature of what we're gonna be talking about with the three of you when you make your report too. Okay, the next item on the agenda, I believe, was recycling. And let's see, Gary, Gary, are you still speechless? Gary, can you talk now? Nope, can't talk. Okay. I feel badly about that. Gary, let's see, it was you, who's next to that, Allison, that item?
It was Gary, Councilwoman Neff, and Sarah Bear.
Yeah.
I
two
had
of-
them on there, Ralph, but I
What?
mean, the last couple meetings, it's really kind of been a mishmash of folks that have been talking. I know it's kind of been going back and forth between you and Lalini about having a meeting with Mazza. So that's kind of where it was left. I don't know if there's anyone particularly in like responsible for this item.
I consider myself to be responsible for that item.
Yeah.
And proposal right now, we have to check it here. There's two reasons to go visit Mazza. One is to find out what their capabilities are, see their machines, see their operation of recycling. I don't think we're familiar with it, but we can talk intelligently about what we can recycle when we understand their facility and what they can recycle. So that's one reason to be there physically and in person. And the second reason is they would like to talk about planning for recycling, including recycling more things in the future. And they'd like to have a roundtable discussion of that. I would like to find a group of at least two of us, and maybe three of us, that would be willing to go there. We have a potential date, which is March the 24th. At the Tinton Falls, at the Mazza facility. I'm going to be talking to Lalini about that because maybe she'll have her shots by then. I should have my shots by Tuesday, so should Maida. So we would be able to, and I think if any of you feel comfortable, because either because you had the vaccine or you simply, we will be observing masking completely. I would like to have another person who'd go along with us. I think Lalini will. Would somebody else like to go along with us and visit Mazza? Okay, I don't see any volunteers. Any volunteers want to raise their hands? No, yes, good. Okay, Very good. So we have Gary, who is willing to go, and that's good. I'll be
Can you
in
hear me
touch.
now?
Yeah.
Gary, I can hear you.
Hey, we can hear you.
What you
Ah,
do,
yeah.
move to another room?
No, I don't know. I
Yeah.
left the meeting and then came back in. I think I did something wrong with the microphone the first time.
Great.
Because I've been
Okay.
on these before and it's always worked. So I don't know.
Doesn't
why it
matter.
didn't work
You're
tonight.
here. That's good. Gary, I'd love to have you along. And so we're going to target that date, and I have to get a confirmation from them, although they know we're planning on it. So that's Monday, the 20th. I think it's Monday. But anyway, it's the 24th of March. Should be a morning meeting about 10 o'clock. Should last a couple of hours.
It's a Wednesday, Ralph, the 24th.
Wednesday, okay.
Yeah, look.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. It says Wednesday. Thank you, Allison, for keeping me honest.
I got
Okay, so Wednesday, the 24th. Gary, I'll look for you and I'll call Lalini.
Okay.
Okay, good. We'll move ahead from there. We should have a good report after that one. It'll be after the next meeting. Next item on the agenda, I keep looking at the clock up above. I'd like to quit at 9.
The solar proposal is the next item under new business.
Solar proposal, and that's kind of important. Kelly?
Okay, sure. So as I mentioned earlier, this came up on our green team meeting as well. And I did bring up the examples of Bradley Beach, and it actually turns out that Councilman McHugh knows the mayor of Bradley Beach. So he was going to reach out to him and find out more about it. I have documentation that they submitted for Sustainable Jersey that includes their part of their billing and their they own theirs outright. And I have some documentation from there that they submitted, as well as from Franklin Township that I just passed on to some people from the green team, and I'd be happy to share that with you guys as well.
Sure.
So Mike McHugh was gonna reach out to Bradley Beach and see if he could even go tour them out as well. In addition, I know Lalini was following up with the Asbury Park. If you guys weren't aware, Ralph sent this out to Lalini and I, that in Asbury Park Press, Asbury Park School System just is in contract to install solar panels on 5 of their buildings through the company Solar Landscape, who is actually leasing the solar panels to Asbury schools. And at the end of, so Solar Land, according to the article, and what as Lalini actually talked to them on the phone, the Asbury Park School project consisted of 102,000 square feet across 5 buildings, and the lease is expected to save the schools 1.8 million over 15 years. So she talked to the company, and the representative who she spoke with said that the leasing situation, the cost is pretty much zero down for the borough. There are legal charges and charges related to the engineering analysis to figure out how to install the panels, but the solar company pretty much pays for those. They seem to have a number of different plans available, including one that advances payment for the construction of the roof itself. And Lalini was hoping to set up a call to, look more into this, the details, and talking about what details we have in place. I joined in on the council meeting, the last council meeting, where they were planning to vote to approve of the plans for the PD building. I think based on that discussion, it seems like the DPW roof would be much more viable option for installing solar panels onto the roof. It's south facing. It's a lot more open coverage compared to the police department, which is shaded. It's not as much south facing. However, I did bring up the idea of, because you can get points through Sustainable Jersey as well and other solar options with not just solar panels, but passive solar design, other constructs of green design. And so I just brought up if possibly looking at the plans once they were already adopted, if how finite are they? Are we still able to make modifications for this? So the mayor was open to that and was going to follow up with a March facilities meeting, perhaps have the green team and even members, the environmental committee as well, if we want to kind of look at the plans and see where there are some opportunities, see what's already proposed in there and see if there are any other opportunities as well, including, anything passive solar design could also be, landscape, shade trees. And I think this would also be important too, to kind of talk about the watershed, and what kind of, pervious, impervious,
Mhm.
structures we have. So I think that's going to be scheduled for the March facilities meeting, to do
Good.
that, to meet and have to go through those plans. But I do think that out of the police department and the DPW, the one that would be most likely or have the most potential for considering the active solar panels would be the DPW.
Yeah, and the architects, I looked at that building too, and I took my tricycle over there recently to see it before the snows. And the roof structure, more than the structure, the roof, the facing direction of the roof, basically towards the south, should be in place. And once it's in place, you can't change it. So that really has to be looked at from the beginning to see that it's solar friendly. I think that's the important thing you got to look for, that the design is solar friendly.
Right.
Why,
Um,
why can't we propose, even with the PD, because it's, the roofs, if it's gonna be the way it is now, they're east-west.
Yeah,
Why couldn't you do, I've seen a lot of facilities, schools mainly, have kind of semi-covered parking lot, and that semi-coverage are solar panels.
They did
Because-
mention that. They said they were looking into that as well and perhaps doing it over the parking. They also, mentioned that they're looking into electric vehicles down the line as well, but they did mention that, Brian.
Yeah, if we could do that, don't
Oh.
worry about the building so much. Do the
Brian's
parking lot.
right.
Electric vehicles, I'm not sold on that because you still have to plug them into something, but if you plug them into solar, then it's a win-win.
Right.
At the police department, you would not only have a much larger area for solar than you would out of a main structure.
If you did the parking
Using
lot, yeah.
using Brian's suggestion, but all the police cars would be free of snow and the cops wouldn't have to go out and wipe them off. And
Right,
they might like that.
oh, poor guys, yeah. Oh, Greg's muted,
You would need to get the snow off the solar panels, however.
correct, yeah,
Yep.
ask Texas,
That
I
you
mean,
would.
it's a conversation worth having, but ask Texas about their renewable energy, and they're frozen to death, and it's sad. But their windmills froze up, the gas lines froze up, the solar panels froze up. They're in
Yeah,
bad shape, but
It's
so.
it's
as a
really sad.
source of
But
energy,
look, they make the solar panels up in New England.
Well,
Are heated so you can melt off the snow.
right, so you obviously have to take that into account. And
Yeah,
it obviously would still be on the grid. It's not gonna be a standalone structure. It still has to be on the power grid. And that's how it works. You don't want to have battery storage and store your own battery power. So when you have residual power, the power company has to buy it back. So
Okay.
that's always been a question when we talked about this 20 years ago, to do it at the municipal buildings and lead acid batteries, all that kind of, you can't do it. So, but I would just do it where the power, you get a power credit from JCP&L, so you're not sitting on batteries, because you don't want that maintenance either. I mean, the battery technology.
I agree. You're right. You're absolutely
Yeah,
right.
but I would do the parking lot, cover that.
Joey, this is Brian, is a good idea, doing the parking lot. Do you think you could put together a 1 to 2 page, no more, outline of a proposal for solar for both the police department and the DPW? And the leasing arrangement, by the way, for any of you who don't know, the leasing arrangement is used by towns because the towns, getting a tax credit is useless to towns.
Right.
So the government provides a tax credit. Towns don't pay taxes. So towns typically lease the facilities from somebody who does pay taxes and can take advantage of that and thus lower the price. A landscape company, a large solar US, for example, does a lot of it. So you might just look into that, Kelly.
You don't want to worry about the maintenance on it. Let somebody else worry about it. That's
Well,
all.
the solar company does that. So Kelly, if you could put together a talking white paper, distribute it to us, bullet point style, for what we want to see at the police department, what we want to see at the DPW, what our proposal would be to look into. Not something that's a fixed plan, but something that these are the open issues. These are what we think you might do.
Yeah, and I think this was one of the questions too, and Allison, you might even want to jump in. But when it's hard too, because they're already at such a late state in the game with designing the PD. But that's why, so if what that actually means with proposing the PD plans, which they did, I believe, right, Allison, and then what lenience or wiggle room is there to kind of add this on? But then I also brought up this question of,
But let me just interrupt. That's why Brian made his comment. Don't try, go to the parking lot.
Just go to the parking lot. Don't do the building. The building doesn't make sense to do anyway. So just
Right.
do the parking lot, which
It's
they're not.
the building's oriented incorrectly.
And I do believe that they already have that, right, Allison? They've already discussed kind of that.
Canopy in the parking lot. A solar
Yes, an
canopy in the
overhang. But now with the DPW, they already have the plans, and they push that off to vote to approve that to the next meeting because facilities hadn't looked at that. But my question was too, when would those plans be made public to like us to look at, to kind of see?
They've always been public to look at. But from my standpoint, and maybe it's too simplistic because I'm that guy, is what's the difference if they put them on a new roof if they're not paying for them?
What's your point?
If we make the suggestion, the town's not, if it doesn't cost, if it's net neutral in terms of cost, what's the difference?
Right, because of your leasing, right?
Because you're leasing them, you're leasing them out anyway.
But then that's to make sure that the roof has the right angle.
Yeah, the right pitch.
Pitch,
Look at them.
color. You don't want a brown roof with black, PV panels, like different things like that.
It's all
things like it ought to be
available online on the town's website.
I know. I tried looking for it. I'll search again.
Maybe Alice, do you have them in a PDF?
They're in the process of changing things.
All right.
They just approved, they didn't approve the actual plans. They approved the architect to continue with schematics and things for DPW, south end, north end, the parking lot, and that type of thing.
All right. So
As
what I
well
would
as-
suggest, then what I would suggest, if you could put together a memo and send it to Ralph and we'll sign off on it as an addend, to give the council, the mayor and council a heads up. Here's what we would like to request while you're still in the architectural phase. It's not completed.
Well, that's why they're going to meet with agreed to meet with the green team. The facilities committee will meet with the green team to get input.
I would do it as a letter coming from the environmental commission, no offense to the green team, which is a governing body, we're part of the governing body.
Look, if they're meeting with a green team, let's take advantage of it. And if you had this bullet item, a 1 or 2 page memo, one for the PD and one for the DPW, and bullet items that they need to look for and what they're doing.
Right, but
including south, give me a chance, Brian. Including south facing, including leasing the units, including a certain capacity, which you ought to be able to calculate because I think the plans are available from the roof size. You might, my guess is you won't make more than 50 to 100,000 a year, no more than 100, probably closer to 50
Probably.
a year from this selling it back to back to JCPL. The big thing is that you are saving energy.
Right.
That's what we're trying to do.
And my big thing is I think the green team is great, but it's an adjunct. It's part of the environmental commission.
Well, that's
Not a
fine.
commission. So
but-
what I was suggesting is that it comes from you, Ralph, as the chair of the environmental commission to the governing body saying, here's what we spoke about. Here's our recommendations. How do we facilitate this?
I agree.
On the agenda.
I agree, Brian, and I'm just saying, Kelly and the green team should feel free to, even if it's in advance of that, to share the
Absolutely.
ideas.
Absolutely. But I think
you
a
know.
letter should come from you, Ralph.
Absolutely, I believe that will happen after Kelly puts it together for the next meeting, and then Kelly and maybe you and I will talk separately and word this perfectly and get it back to them.
Yeah.
Kelly, if you
Time
go
is
on the
of the essence.
borough's website under departments,
Okay.
then you click on police department.
Uh-huh.
Right on that page to the right, you'll see news and announcements. There's Fairhaven Police Department conceptual design presentation. That was from back in October 2020.
Okay.
I believe they're discussing updates with that, but that is the latest thing that was posted. And I don't think they've done anything with Public Works because they were more focused on PD at the
Right.
moment.
And
Great. Thank you, Allison. I'll check that out.
Yeah,
Okay.
Public Works was kind of a simplistic thing that it was gonna be towards Third Street, where that empty lot is now on the 3rd Street side. And it was just a couple of buildings in a row with the south and north facing roofs.
They're big buildings, big buildings.
So
Brian.
obviously that south side would be a great spot to put the panels on the roof. And also there's a lot of property there. If they don't sell off the 9 lots, that you can put freestanding panels also. You don't need to have them on a roof, right? You look at these solar fields, there's thousands and thousands of,
If they look nice, yeah.
and.
This
and-
is a residential area.
So there's, but I think PD is time is of the essence with PD because they're further ahead, as Allison.
Okay,
They're kind of DPWs on the back burner, so I think we want to jump on PD.
Yeah, and PD, what's posted also has recreation attached, but they've nixed that for now. They're
Yeah,
focused on that, so.
He wanted to build
And I think they
some
might
big
be
sports
having-
complex behind Gary's house, and Gary was really looking forward to that.
You could just scroll through. I think there's also a basic DPW, but if you need something further and I can get it for you, let me know.
Great. Thank you.
okay, thank you, Allison. There,
Thanks, Callie. Thanks, Allison. I think it's a
I'm
great
glad
idea.
you're attending the meeting, Allison. It's very good. Okay, the
Put in your
next,
time card, Allison.
What, Brian?
Make sure you punch your time card.
Yeah, right.
next item on the agenda, after that, is the question of, well, I don't see enhance the budget anyway. It's Fairhaven. We have not found a need for a budget. If we've needed money from time to time, Teresa has found it for us. It's never been more than $4,000. In some cases, it's been fees for organizations. Am I correct in saying that we have a budget for about $1,000, Allison?
Teresa was working on the budget this weekend. And I had advised that you guys were looking for a bump of some sort. It is a tight budget, but she told me today that she has plugged in 2,500.
I believe we could use that because we have dues to Anjec and things like that. And
Right.
we will have some costs because we're getting to be a more aggressive group.
And
But I can't
Councilwoman
say,
Neff, Councilwoman Neff had, advised of some of the things that you would like to move forward with. So
right,
And
I
now,
don't know if it will be increased, but I know she said she plugged in 2,500 for now, but that's up for discussion. It's just a very.
What Lilini had wouldn't exceed 2,500. I really believe that.
So this would be able to, we would be able to utilize it because the green team is an adjunct or a part of the EC. So we would be able to use that budget for green team activities.
Oh, absolutely,
That's what we
absolutely.
discussed at the last meeting, was I think initially, John and Brian were gonna put something together initially, but it was intended so that we had budget so the green team could have some money too. So that was the whole point of it from the last meeting.
So I think that what we ought to do here is Kelly and Brian probably ought to put their heads together on ways we can spend this. And I would like to join it because I know of the dues we pay and the like. So if you would put together between you, just quick items, back of the envelope, forward them to me. I will then put them together and send it to the budget people.
I'm great at spending other people's money, so.
Yeah, well, I'm a taxpayer like you are, but
Oh, yeah.
I try to keep expenditures down.
Yeah, no, Kelly, shoot me an email and we'll get our heads together on it and see. I know it's not a lot of big budgetary things, but we should have something laid out.
Shoot me something in 10 days to a couple of weeks, okay?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is, well, I guess we talked about that one basically. I talked about Monza.
Yeah, we finished all the items.
We
Ralph.
finished all the
It's- The last item would be the council update, which we won't have tonight. Other than that, if we have any public comments, which I think Susan is the only one in attendance, so I don't know if Susan has any comments or thoughts on anything.
If not, we're gonna get done before 9.
I've had my eye on the clock.
I got a question.
Yeah. I don't see Susan's hand raised, so I don't think she has any
No.
comment.
Okay,
Speaking of
Well,
the, hold
You're
on,
next.
speaking of the
Yeah.
budget, is there anything in this year's, what's in this year's budget for the pond? I know it's in winter and we never think about this, and I hate to do this at 8:59, but
Here's a real quick synopsis. I was promised 2 years ago, there was 60 grand in the budget to the hydro rake the pond, and that's been and gone. I don't know if Teresa has that back as a line item. I will check with her on it, or if Allison, do you do that or should I do that?
Isn't it associated with the grant that we're waiting to hear back from?
We were, she did file for a grant also. So I'll follow up with Teresa on that to see where things stand.
keep me on the CC list.
2 years ago and it's been and gone.
Brian, keep me on the CC list there.
and the
I'll do it, boss.
That's an item I want to call.
hydro raking is something it's a prerequisite for a larger fountain. Or is
It's not a prerequisite for anything. It just gets it a little bit deeper.
a little deeper?
And since we can't dredge, it was the best of both worlds, and we were gonna spread the hydro raking organic material was gonna be in the proposed new park, or not new park, but trails surrounding Fairhaven Fields. And I don't know where that whole project went. It was last August that we talked about it.
Right.
And because the problem with dredging is you can't get rid of spoils.
Brian, I think I can tell you, I think they had discussions. The prices, the costs were such that I had proposed doing it in parts, in 4 parts, 1 part each year.
Yeah.
And the cost of bringing the equipment in and all 4 times.
No, you can't do it. You gotta do
can't
it
do
one,
that.
you gotta do
You
it
got-
one time. So
You
hydro
gotta
raking,
do it all at once, and it wasn't, it was not a $60,000 job.
it was $73,650 was one bid. There's,
Without
There's
taking the spoils anywhere.
that's correct, because we don't have to. They're not,
right.
we can't call them spoils, Ralph. They're not spoils. All it is organic material that's being hydro raked.
Okay,
There's
they're
two companies.
prizes.
There's one up in not Bergen County, up that way, and there's another one, Princeton. I have both of the proposals, and it was not over 100 grand. For a town
Okay.
like ours, it's not a big expenditure, and we were gonna take care of taking the organic material and putting it on the new trails that were proposed. at Fairhaven Fields.
Yeah, Jim Engel heard of it. He almost had a heart attack.
What's that?
Jim Engel heard of it. He almost had a heart attack.
Yeah, I straightened him out. I was part of the call in August with Fairhaven and the council. And we made it quite clear to Mr. Engel and the other fella, Jones' husband, what's his name? Anyway, that it was not toxic. It's just organic material. It's leaves and muck. The kid, one of my son's friends fell in it yesterday. I said, man, I wouldn't worry about the water. It's the muck. He said, Dad, the brown and black stuff that came up. It's just organic material. And that pond was never deep. It was an ice pond.
It's essentially the plants going down
All
and
it
then
is,
becoming
it's
food for the next generation.
algae,
But
right,
look,
algae
we cut,
grows. And if-
Brian, wait, we cut Pat off. Pat, I think you had more to say.
I didn't hear him at all. Go ahead, Pat.
Oh, no.
Oh.
I was just curious. We're also talking about a larger fountain like Rumson has down at
Right.
their thing.
So
I like it too.
So for
And do we,
45, I have the proposal for that. I got a hold of Rumson. I got a hold of the company that provided it. I have the emails. It was $4,500. My father was going to donate it to the town if they couldn't swing the bill. And just put a bench in to memorialize my grandfather, who used to ride on the McCarter estate. If you all know, we've been here over about 100 years, the family. So,
Well,
and that was all. And so it's an aeration / fountain. So it does both. It aerates. Those little aerators aren't worth a damn. I might as well sit there with a straw. So a good aerator in the south part and the north part would definitely keep it a lot cleaner than what it is today.
Okay, how are we gonna move ahead right now with this? To go back to the council, what new do we have beyond what they turned down?
I don't know that they turned down anything. They just kept on coming up with excuses because the state cut back in funding and the county cut back in funding. And now I'm sure they'll use COVID as a reason to not.
They got no grant. They got no grant as far as I know.
In the budget. I don't know that any grant was obviously there was no
Okay.
grant. I don't know if we were denied the grant or still waiting to hear.
I think we're still waiting to hear.
the trail linkage
Yeah.
through Fairhaven Fields,
Yeah.
we got a letter at the end of the month that they did not select our application.
All right. So there you go.
So the
what
next
this was
fund is this May.
So the Borough and Council wanted to piggyback on that grant for the trail linkage
Right.
to do the hydro raking and use that organic material underneath the quarry dust for the trails, which would make it nice and cushy for those that run. I don't.
But the fountain could go either way
We
without
could
the
do the
hydrant.
fountains either way, Patrick. Like I said, if the town needs some money, we'll buy fountains.
Yeah, I
Um,
contribute to it too.
There was a little bit of a tiff between Teresa and I. She didn't believe it would work, and I being a hydro guy and water and studying all this, it's better than what's there. And for 4,500, the power's already there. I have all the information on them. You can get them with LED lights and and change the lights and all this stuff. Would be not good for Fairhaven, but kind of cool in Asbury or somewhere like that, where you have it as a center of town.
The Ducks would hate that.
Brian,
So yeah, they're there and they're not expensive.
let me offer to do the following if you accept it. I'd like to work with Rich, talk with Rich again about this and talk with Teresa, get the exact facts where we are. Maybe we can help them put a grant together. I think the only thing we could do is to pull out the material from the bottom one way or another.
The only grant, Allison, you started to say, they're gonna reapply in May?
They're opening, open space is opening to accept applications or opening their grant monies for May with a September, I think, deadline.
Okay,
Ralph, from our standpoint, hold on real quick. From our standpoint, it had nothing to do with the pond per se. This had everything to do with moving the hydro rake materials somewhere. And
Right.
that somewhere is to do it ourselves within the town, save us money, to spread it on those new trails that we were getting that grant funding for that was denied. So from our standpoint, there isn't anything to do. Other than if we could make a deal and the green team can sell it as compost to the Fairhaven Garden Club and
Well,
dump it in the gardens, then that's the biggest thing is to get rid of the organic material.
yeah, remember the organic material won't change just because the green team argues for it.
No.
It's the same crap.
They're working, with composting and such. If we could find a place to spread it out, let it dry, it mixes in, it's great compost, it's all organic material, then we can do the hydro raking. I'll come up with the
Oh,
78 grand, whatever it is.
Brian, I'll remember that offer. What I'm gonna do before next month, before our next meeting, is to try to state where things are exactly now, what the opportunities are, and to make a recommendation as to which opportunity looks most
That was the only
pragmatic.
opportunity, and one had nothing to do with the other. Teresa came up with the idea, which is a great one, to piggyback on that grant. But it was not written in the grant that we're taking organic material from the pond. So be careful talking about it.
I know, don't worry. The unseen was seen right away by the
Okay.
people in the natural area. So
Right.
there's no secrets there.
No. I already spoke to them and they were on board because everybody was calling them dredge spoils. And as soon as you bring that up, you open up
Okay.
a big can of worms. You can't dredge the pond. You're hydro raking it. All it's doing is taking that organic material out. That's it.
Okay, very good. But I'm gonna consider that subject closed for now.
Yeah, we're over time
I
now. I'm
missed
leaving.
my 9 o'clock target, but that's okay. Is there anything else that any of you all would want to discuss tonight?
Your next meeting's St. Patty's Day, right?
Next meeting is,
Oh,
that's
look at the
nice.
Irish.
We'll pray to St. Patrick for some of these outcomes.
Oh, we got Flanagan for sure. Keeler, yeah. So, we can I usually only wear blue on St. Patty's Day.
Okay. We won't go there, Brian.
I'm German. What am I gonna do?
Well, blue is the color of another race. They call Scots Irish. Okay, well, thank you all very much then. We'll adjourn the meeting without
Good night,
any
everybody.
formalities. And you all have a nice snow day tomorrow.
No such thing.
We'll see you soon.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night now.
Night, guys.
Good night, everybody.
Right.